Hello again, welcome on a new Sunday in the project of rebuilding my life. So, to start really in the focus center of what this week has been, it's interesting because last week we got the opportunity to go through Ikigais, and what I was able to do this week with the red notebook was to go a little bit deeper into how to choose and select my Ikigai. Okay, so to do a quick sum up on what the approach was, Ikigai was mainly a focus on 4 different disciplines. Okay, I'm going to do the easiest way to search for Ikigai. I'm not going to do the logo with the vocation and the graphic, etc. But I think that it was more or less, to make it simple, a mix between what the world needs, a logo of the dollar, what people is capable of paying you for, what you like, and what you are good at. Okay? So this week, the objective I got was to get more or less an approach on how to orientate my professional life from today to the following weeks and years. And as you might remember, that was one of the main things we tried searching for the first approach, which was something that you were capable of doing for 20 years without feeling tired of doing it, let's say it like this. And this mainly was because the approach nowadays, or at least the conversation I have had with friends, colleagues, and people and the young generation, Gen Z, is doing something that pays well. And I think that this approach has entered our minds because of the scarcity of not getting the ideal job we want, our dream job, and the fact that we need to conform and say, this is what I'm capable of attaining or getting into the market, and from there getting used to working at this specific location, doing this specific job, because I auto-limit myself and I'm not capable of surpassing the mental idea of getting something better. And it's true, the process of getting there wasn't mainly because of education. It's a mix. When I'm talking about education, there are different fields. There's the education you get at home, and there's the education you get at school, and that conforms more or less 50-50. Your education, when you reach 18, that has been the passage and the path you have walked through, and those are more or less the 2 sources of educational rules, needs, etc. you have get until that point. So one of the approaches I was willing to get is not choosing a profession because is the only thing you can get, but choosing a profession because it's orientated or because it's your dream job. But if it's not your dream job, it's getting you towards that specific endpoint. So in my case, the combination of the 4 circles was a mix between my experiences, and to give you, and this is the important part, my experiences until now have been being able to go to a public school, then change to a French private school, thanks to my mother's. When I mean private, isn't private. For us, it was free because my mother was a teacher and we were French, and I studied in a French school, so that was public, even though it was in Spain. To be able to go to university in France, hopefully for me, I was able to get a scholarship. Without that, it would have been a horrible exercise to try to live abroad and study for 3 years, which is what I did at Toulouse, in Toulouse, at the Toulouse School of Economics. From there, I was capable of going to Madrid to study a master's degree in international commerce. That private school was possible for me because of what I mentioned, because I lost my dad when I was 17, and in Spain you get a specific bourse or a specific sum to aid you until you are 25, if I'm not mistaken. And sadly, my parents, my father's salary wasn't that great, so the pension was divided half for my sister and half for me. And with that, during the 4 years or 3 years in this case, from 18 to 21, which is the moment I was studying in Toulouse, I saved as much money as I could. And from there, I was able to get into a private school called the SIC in Madrid. Lucky me, I got another scholarship to be able to go abroad. In this case, it was Shanghai. I spent 8 weeks there, and that was thanks to a scholarship, or at least a preferable price I got into the ones I postulated for the master's degree, and they allow me to have, I don't remember, but I think it was around 3.5k allowance in the master's degree fee, and from that amount I was able to finance my trip to Shanghai. During this specific path of studies, I have always been kind of the kid who wants to be taking decisions, or at least molding the future based on what the present needs are. And with that, I mean, I have always presented myself to be the class principal. I think that principal in English means teacher, so at least the class representative, that's it. And by being the class representative, I think that first you need to take your fears away, because presenting yourself in a class of 30 students and saying I want to represent you, I think that that's something that's already showing more or less your values, attitude, and how you want to deal in life. And that was me. I was, every time groups were created, I was trying to be the speaker. And even though my skills are not the same in English that it could be in French, which was how I did my studies, or in Spanish, which is my mother's, is not my mother's tongue language, because my mother's tongue language is French, but get me, here is Spain is the country I have lived all my life, so Spanish for me is as fluent as it can get. But that was me. I was someone who liked speaking, but not the kind of person who likes to speak to say nothing. I like to speak to say things that might change the paradoxal, the actual situation. And that was the reason why when I was representative, I was able to fly, to get into the United Nations program and some other hopefully good opportunities I got. Not only because I was saying, in this case, saying shit, but because I was trying to use my speech and my way of presenting in order to build a project, a program, an exercise, teamwork, etc., and present it in a way for our team or the project to win as much as I could get it to win. So that will be, for me, what I'm good at. And hopefully for me, or at least my approach is not being a speaker, taking informations and only say them out loud, because I don't think that that's totally, for me, it's being a parrot. I don't like being a parrot. I like to talk, but I like to talk when I believe in some specific things. So that will be, for me, the other reason why when you talk about what the world needs, I think that the world needs sometimes to think out of the box and to trust your gut. I think that it will be a mix between those two. So it will be to trust your gut and to, I think that sometimes, and I'm going to put thinking out of the box. I think that sometimes it's not totally about the best creative idea, is how close the idea is to reality. And that's something I'm reading and I'm validating again, reading Yuri Levine's book, Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution, which is more or less how I think the path of what I'm going to do is orientated. I had the experience of entrepreneurship when I was 24. I decided to leave my job in Paris, working for what will be a Fortune 500 company from France, let's say like this. And I decided to leave my job after 2 years because I felt the need of starting a business. The business was really simple. It was kind of local Amazon, to say like this. And the main idea behind it is COVID started. I thought about local businesses. I thought about the hegemonic power that Amazon got, and I thought, okay, that for big brands selling on Amazon, it's good and okay because they can live and they can sell more thanks to Amazon. But what happens with the local businesses that are not going to get into Amazon because of the logistic chain, because of the knowledge gap, etc., etc. So I decided to build a marketplace, a local marketplace. That experience was great. I'm not going to deep dive in this specific subject because I think that from now to the end of my 50 weeks challenge, I will have time to speak about the learnings I got and the reason why I feel more comfortable starting again right now. But to sum up with the principal idea, I felt I could do whatever I want, not in terms of my day-to-day, meaning on a day-to-day basis, but I was able to build or rethink or create everything I wanted because the scenario was mine. And I think that specific feeling, something I'm not good at, but something I like, the scenario is yours, is regarding the fact that when you have a specific job, there are certain conditions you cannot totally control. So, first, you can control the field. You can, meaning you are at the end applying for a job. So you can control what job are you applying for. What you cannot control are things that you don't know when you are entering the job. Sometimes before the end, the last interview is your salary. You can maybe get into a position where the salary at the end matches your expectations, but if your salary is in a city that doesn't allow you to live correctly, then your salary is not enough. So that's something at the end that you cannot totally control. You cannot enter a room with your boss and say, I want this salary, which is 3 times what I'm earning right now. I'm not going to give you negotiation classes right now, but that's not happening even if you have negotiation skills. So you cannot control your salary, you cannot control your city, you cannot control your team. At the end, you arrive in a position where the team is already set, and except if you enter as a manager, then you cannot control totally the team because you are not the one doing the hiring. What you cannot control totally, let's say like this, is your boss. Yes, you can choose once you arrive to the final interview if the person you have met is correct or not, but you cannot totally control because at the end you need to decide if a job is worth it or if a boss is worth it only after having talked for 1 hour. And that conversation a lot of times is a one-path conversation, meaning someone asking you skills and questions in order to validate if you are worth it to enter the company, not if the boss is worth your values to be working for him. So at the end, there are a lot of things that you cannot control, and that's the reason why after some years, that experience ended up in 2023, and from there until now, I have worked in 3 companies. Now that I think about it, 2 years have changed a lot in my mind. I remember that the moment I had to close La Licantina, which was the name of the local Amazon, was in March 2023. And from March 2023 until today, August 2025, I think that 2 years and almost 5 months have changed a lot the way I see the professional market. I wouldn't say that it's because the companies I work for were failures for me. I'm not going to enter in that debate, at least not now. But I think that I learned a lot because I was capable of going through professional hiring processes. I was capable of hiring and being a manager, so choosing my team. I was capable of deciding if I was willing to stay in a company. I got fired. So I went through all the different stages that you could get, and I think that it gave me a great picture about how the professional world works. And at the end, my conclusion was, at least during this breakthrough and the fact that I decided to rebuild my life, is not going to be a path you feel comfortable working in, because there are times where you have the stage to do your change and your presentation. But I think, at least I understand it like this. It's like a pyramid, okay? At the end, you can be like the employee, even though you are a manager in the pyramid in the third layer. But above you, you will always have your superior, and that superior will have his superior. So at the end, it's really difficult to fulfill the employees or the managers in the third layer, meaning you, objectives, will, ambitions, etc., because you will always have someone above you willing to fulfill theirs. And I think that that's, I wouldn't say the scary part about the professional world, but the thing I'm not feel comfortable being in is when someone else's ambitions, will, expectations, etc., are more important than yours. Because at the end, I have one life, and if I have to put 8, 10, 12 hours per day working for someone, is not totally the idea of making someone rich instead of making you rich. I won't say that like this, because I feel that the perfect equation for you will be to work at something that you like, that you're good at, that people is paying you a little bit, a little amount at the start, but after 10, 15 or 20 years, I feel almost totally compelled and sure to say that at the end, if you do this compounding, like the compounding interest will make you earn the money that you wanted to earn at first. So of course you can do that process by being in a company, but what we see today in the market is that disloyalty is the best example for you to grow, because at the end is the fact of changing companies allow you to renegotiate your salary much better than if you try to negotiate your salary in your current company, which is crazy for me, because at the end you are trying to be loyal and it works better when you are not. So I think that perverse effect is something that I don't want to experience on my side. At the end, I don't want to be switching jobs because I cannot get or make my value shown with my actual company, or sometimes you do it and they don't want to give you what you are worth. So in order to erase that specific possibility, my middle of the circle, or how we'll define my Ikigai, okay, is through entrepreneurship. I'm precise, entrepreneurship, let me write it down. Entrepreneurship, which at the end is a French name, which is something that I like. And when I mean through, is because at the end, Ikigai is not only choosing the vessel, let's say like this, but it's choosing what is going to go inside the vessel. So for me, I imagine the vessel as a boat. Don't get the whole picture here, I'm not going to zoom, but my drawings are not that good at, not that good at drawing, but it's like a boat, and you need to decide what goes on the inside. So at the end, it's like a car, and fuel is like barrels inside a boat. It's how are you going to present your mission, and what is your mission about, in order for the middle or the center or the inside of this specific vessel that you're willing to transmit is powerful enough for you. So as I was mentioning, I listed this week my principal pains that I found during my life, I would say. And mainly I found two, okay? From there, I needed to choose one, because you cannot always choose the two. But I think that at the end, both will be connected, because you can and you will get the picture once I finish, but you can connect them in time together. So I think that I will be capable at one specific moment to cover both, but one was education and the second was community. Why? And that's the interesting, which community? And that's the interesting part of community, of being able to present myself, to expose my thoughts, to tell you really what I went through, who I am, etc. Because you will better get the reasoning exercise I needed to go through in order to get the same conclusions I had, not the same, but at least the same idea of strength of ideas and strength of mission. And for me, it was education and community. Why? Because at the end, I felt this after my studies. I think that my studies are worth 25K, more or less. And if I needed to start again, I don't think that I will choose the same path. And that, I think that says a lot, because it's different as this question asked when they are talking about your life, meaning if you had to change something in your life, what would you change? A lot of people say nothing, because if I change nothing, I will be the person I am today. Worth it, good answer. A lot of different ones could be also good answers. But in these cases, would I select the path and the studies path the same way I did if I had today's knowledge? And I think that the approach will be no, because one of the main expenses I got was the master degree. And I think the master degree was too expensive, really, for the knowledge I got. And here I'm not willing to criticize my master school, even though I think that I'm criticizing all master schools, but I think that I won't be able to understand. As a business person, I'm going to do both reasoning, but here in Spain, for example, a degree in the public university is around 2K. And when you go to the masters, then you enter the 10K until 20K scenario of paying for a master. I can understand perfectly that at the end, professors are different, because sometimes one of the criticisms you got talking about public universities is that the teachers sometimes haven't done what they are teaching about. I get it. So the opposite is private schools, which at the end, as I'm paying professors and teachers that sometimes have had a relationship with the specific field they are teaching about, or maybe they are doing it part-time. I remember I had one teacher, which I like a lot, which was Fernando Flores, and he worked in the optical glasses sector for Cione, which was one of the manufacturing companies here in Spain doing glasses. And he was a great professor, but he was also CEO, which was incredible for me, because at the end you are a CEO of your company and at the same time you are providing classes. I think that is the best bridge you could get about transmitting information from one side to the other one. But it's true that that's not the best example, because let me give you an example. I can get a CEO of a company with 3 employees or a company with 10 employees from the digital and marketing scenario, teaching you about digital strategy. Okay, who will be the best person to teach you about digital and marketing strategies? Maybe someone that has scaled his company to a point where he has the autoritas to teach you about subjects, because he has lived that experience. And that's something you cannot totally get in all universities. At the end, you need to work with the professorship or the community of professors that is allowed for you, and maybe the best CEOs are not willing to teach, or maybe the best CEOs are willing to teach and then they are not good communicators. So I think that layer of knowledge is sometimes broken, and that's one of the reasons why I feel masters are so expensive, because you could have in the life of one master, which maybe was created in the 2005, professors at that time were great, and now you have the same master in the 13th edition with a different cluster of professors that are not as good as the ones you got in the first years of these masters. And I think that degradation is not shown in the price. You you have not a degree decreasing in price because you know that the value of the professors you have in your team are less valuable. On the contrary, I think that with time, prices increase because of inflation, which I don't understand how inflation works in the educational. I understand it for goods because at the end you have transport, but not for education degrees and summaries and materials, etc. So those will be more or less the reasons why I wouldn't take my path again if I had the opportunity to. So that was one of the frustration. I think that you can see it while I'm talking. Those are things that I don't like about how the educational system works. And that was the winner, at least in this first approach, or what Ikigai is. So I'm going to test it during these next weeks with different exercise, business ideas, in order to try to get something related with education that matches a project that I could build that has the 4 layers, meaning a place and a company where my message will be strong enough to take the scenario, a subject that I will like because I felt the problem in my body and I felt it myself, so I know that I will have the authorities to talk about it. Something that people will be able to pay for, meaning I will be able to put as much value as possible together in order for people to say, okay, this is something I want to pay for, and something that's changing the world, because I think that it will be really important if you can do something great in education, because it will affect the next generations. And I'm for sure know that, and that's a sentence I've got these weeks, meaning every generation says that the last one, says that the next one, meaning the new one, is crazy. They are not as good at, etc. And I think that a lot of people are saying that about Gen Z. And I think that instead of criticizing, I think that we should try to solve the problem, or at least the problem that Gen Z are having, in order for them to be better than what we were. And AI will be one of the first ints, or the first things I'm going to try to check while trying to come with an idea. And I will tell you more about it in the next weeks. And the second one, only because you might want to know it, was community. One of the things that was more complicated for me, and I think that I will feel the same thing building this specific project, is building a team. I think that one of the advantages you got when you were in high school or at university is that at the end your classmates were the best testing group you could have, meaning at the end you had, if the class was up with 30 employees, you had 29 people where you could choose which one do you want to work with, which one is great at what, etc. But what happens is, in your circle, friendship, etc., sometimes you don't have this specific example. The number of my friends who are entrepreneurs must be over 20 people, 3 or 2. And in those 3 or 2, you need to find entrepreneurship skills, will, personality, and then you need to find a job that matches this person. Because if you try to do the other way, it's not going to work. Because if you try to put a circle in a square box, it's not going to work. So this is the same thing. You need to find the person and then almost build the job for them, or the opposite side, have a clear idea of what you're looking for, and that's when the problem starts. If I'm searching for a software engineer, I will need to go into LinkedIn and from there search for software engineers here in Alicante, etc., and I will have to start the process again. But you don't really know them more than what they show on LinkedIn. So at the end, you will need to go through the process of validating and filtering, meaning doing a lot of interviews, doing a lot of talks, having a lot of coffees, etc., until you reach that specific person that you think could be a match for you. And then you will always have the possibility of failing and starting and working with him or her for 1 month and then seeing it's not a match and then have to restart the process. So it's the same that hiring at the end. Finding a team to build your project with is like hiring. It's really complicated, and I think that now with AI you have an opportunity to do it differently, let's say like this. But in any case, those will be the conclusions regarding my Ikigai, and this isn't only the process of these weeks. I think that it was something that started to raise in my mind, and this week I decided to close the circle and take a decision, and it will be a project through entrepreneurship where I will make the vessel be a startup and a company, and the content to be regarding education and how I think I could make a little difference and change the world a little bit in the good sense. And that will be fulfilling for me because I know me, I know what I want. And when I'm talking about the pillars I talked during my third video, it was about building something meaningful. So if I'm capable of doing this, I think that I will be one step closer to rebuilding my life. So let's start like this. Next week, next Sunday, I will come to you with a little bit more of what I have been going through thanks to the red notebook. And I think that I will have to make the computer enter the game. It will help me a lot. So it will be also with the computer in the next video. So guys, thanks a lot as always for sticking here with me, and see you next week. See you next Sunday. Bye.